Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made for a Punched Out Thursday to die for. For this layout, I used a stitched diamond die and a paper pack that I received a while back. I will link the video in the description box. I did a product review on it. This paper pack is available on Amazon. I thought that it would be perfect for the subject that I'm scrapbooking, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. To give the diamond shapes some dimension, I cut out 3 cardstock shapes. I layered those on top of each other using some ATG adhesive, and then I put a piece of the pattern paper on top. I am now using some Distress ink in Vintage Photo to ink all of the edges. The die cutting took a little bit of time on this layout, but I think that it was all worth it in the end. I'm going to create a mixed media background, and I'm going to layer those diamonds on top of it. I'm using 2 Art Anthology sprays. The colors are Waimea Bay and Siesta Key. I'm using the packaging technique to apply the color to a piece of smooth white cardstock that has been covered with some white gesso. I spread the color all around the cardstock. I'm just trying to keep it away from the edges because I'm going to have those diamonds covering the majority of the background. I'm spreading the color so that it covers a wide area, but I'm not going to have a very involved mixed media background. I was at a weekend crop, and a lot of times I just bring the bare minimum materials. Sometimes I really struggle with what materials to bring on a crop. I always have some photos picked out and some pattern papers ready to go, but I don't always know what mixed media products to bring and what embellishments to bring. So I try to carefully select the mixed media, the paints and the sprays, but I have learned that sometimes I can just finish the layout at home as long as I have the basics to get the layout started. In addition to the blue, I wanted to add some hints of other colors that were in the pattern papers. I happen to have this pink color with me, and I thought that this would be a good addition to the background. This is a Shimmerz Inklings, and the name of the paint is absolutely mauvelous. I'm not adding a lot of this color. I just wanted to have a variety of colors. I didn't want the background to be all blue, so I am adding lots of splatters. I also added some more of the blue splatters to the background as well. Can never get enough splatters. One of the nice things about using a background that has gesso on it is it makes it really easy to clean up little mistakes, splatters that go in the wrong places. I used a baby wipe to just clean the lower right-hand corner, and now I'm adding even more splatters. This time I'm using a Shimmerz Spritz called Treasured Hymn. This is a brownish color. I thought that that would add a nice variety of colors to the background. I'm looking for colors that are in the pattern papers, even just little hints of color to add little touches to the background. Now I'm adding some water droplets. I sprinkle some water on top of the large area of color, and then when I roll a paper towel across the page, it lifts up some of the color and it makes a cool splattered effect on the background. I brought my heat tool with me and I used it to dry in between layers of color. Often I'll splatter the background more than once because I don't know if I added enough droplets of water until I lift up the color. So I did that twice, and now I'm going to start positioning those diamonds on the background. I start off by just placing the diamonds in lines across the page. If you notice, a lot of the diamonds look brownish in color, but there are hints of other colors. I'm trying to spread those other colors around evenly on the background. There are just really pretty hints of blues and oranges and yellows, and I wanted to make sure that I had those evenly distributed, maybe not evenly, but at least distributed across the entire layout. At first, I thought that I was going to put the diamonds going in a diagonal across the page or have some type of asymmetrical composition. In the end, though, I decided that I was just going to use a symmetrical kind of standard way of placing them on the background. I alternate between having rows of 5 and rows of 6. I used ATG adhesive and I attached the first diamond shape down. I use my T-square, especially at the beginning, to make sure that I have these diamonds going straight across the page, because if I make a mistake now, that will throw off the placement of all of the other diamonds. I not only use the T-square to make sure that the rows of diamonds were straight, but also to make sure that I had them centered correctly in the page. And then I continued throughout this process to double check all of the diamonds with the T-square. And now I've completed placing them on the background. Now I'm going to be mounting my photo on a piece of white cardstock. This photo was taken quite a few years ago now in Pennsylvania in a place called Eastern State Penitentiary. If you've been following me for a while, you may have seen me scrapbook other photos from Eastern State Penitentiary. It is a prison that was started in the 1800s. It's now closed down and is a museum. It is super cool. It's decaying, but it was a really, really cool structure, and the decay just seems to add to the charm. This might not be your thing. I really love it. I love taking pictures. All the pictures seem to come out so cool. It's something that if you're interested in history, you might enjoy going there. So if you're ever in Pennsylvania and you have a chance, I would highly recommend it. And don't forget to take some pictures while you're there. In addition to the white cardstock mat, I wanted to add a mat made out of pattern papers. So I selected a couple of pattern papers and layered them around the photo. I used my scissors to distress the edges. You're not supposed to use the surface of your scissors, but it does distress the pages very easily. And then I layer those behind the photo. I not only distress the edges, I also ink them with the vintage photo distress ink. I'm also going to bend up the edges as well. I just want to create a lot of distress. Because this photo shows a whole lot of peeling paint, I thought that having distressed edges would go along really well with the photo. On a lot of my layouts, I like to have a lot of contrast between elements like the photo and the background. For this layout, I didn't worry too much about having a lot of contrast between the mat and the diamond shapes that are on the background. The distressed effect helps to separate the pattern paper on the photo from the pattern paper in the background, so you could still see where the photo mat ends and the background shapes begin. I repeated the steps of distressing the edges and then bending them up a couple of times until I had the distressed look that I wanted. I was getting ready to attach my matted photo down to the background, and then I was thinking I needed just a little bit more pattern paper at the top. So I didn't include all of the footage, but I did cut another strip, distress the edge, and then attach it to the top of the photo. And then I added a little bit more ink to the edge, and then I'm finally done with the photo, and I'm going to attach it down to the layout. Oftentimes I will pop up my photo on some foam, but in this case I just attach the photo right down to those diamonds because the diamonds are already slightly elevated up off the page because I put so many layers of paper behind them. I love to add photo corners to my photos on my scrapbooking layouts. I often use my EK Success scalloped photo corner punch. I punched out some corners using the same pattern paper, and I put one in each of the 4 corners. After looking on my phone for a while, looking at some synonyms, I finally came across the word arresting, which I think is perfect because Eastern State Penitentiary used to be a prison. So since arresting has more than one meaning, I thought this would be kind of a cool pun for my title. So I'm going to call this layout Arresting Beauty. The title might be a little redundant, but it was late when I came up with this idea. At first I wrote the word arrested, then I changed it to arresting, and then I used a blue and reddish paper to mount the words of the title on. Once I had the word arresting completed, I did the exact same thing for the word beauty. You could see that I inked the edges of the letters, and then I also inked the edges of the pattern paper that I put behind the letters. That helps to tie the whole layout together. And then I used a little ATG adhesive and I attached the title down to the right of the photo. And I added some white enamel dots to the photo corners. This footage came out blurry, so I only included a moment of it. I added some modeling paste to the diamonds. I used a Tim Holtz stencil, and then I mixed together some modeling paste and a Finnabair paint called Patina Effects in brass. I wanted to add a little bit of texture to those diamond shapes. I created this embellishment using a mold and some air drying clay. I painted it with some Finnabair paint called White Pearl. Then to distress the surface, I used a Prima metallic wax in rich copper, and I just rubbed a little bit across the surface using my finger. I lightly applied the paste to the surface. I didn't want to cover the entire piece with the wax, but I did want to add it in a couple of places, and I repeated the application in a couple of spots so that it would look a little bit darker just in a few areas. Then I used some glossy accents and I pressed down very well so that the piece would stay attached. It was a little bit warped. The air drying clay that I used warps a little bit, but luckily I was able to flatten it out against the layout. In my stash, I found that I had these corners. These are meant for the corners of scrapbooking albums, but I kind of liked the way they looked on the corners of this layout, so I decided to add those pieces. And then I picked out a number of other embellishments. I found I had a number of locks and keys, and I thought that went really well with the theme of a prison layout. I also had some gears. I decided to include those as well. Those already had a little bit of a patina look to them, which I thought matched very well. And then I also included a little metal swirl underneath the photo. I'm using glossy accents to hold those pieces down to the layout. Whenever I want to attach things down to my layout, such as sequins or beads or pearls, I like to use glossy accents. Glossy accents dries shiny, so I had asked in one of my videos if anybody uses anything else, and I got some great suggestions. I got some Nuvo glue, and I also purchased some art glitter glue. Although I haven't personally tried those other glues yet, I think it's good to know there are other options other than just the glossy accents, and I am very appreciative for those suggestions. After I had glued down all of the metal embellishments that were on the page, I decided to add some more of the metallic wax to the layout. Once again, I dipped my finger in the wax and I used my finger to spread the wax onto the areas where I had applied the modeling paste. I don't think it made a huge difference in the layout, but I thought that I would give it a try. I also scraped away a little of the modeling paste on one of the diamonds because I thought that it looked a little bit too regular. And the modeling paste can often be scraped off, but you do have to be careful you don't take your pattern paper off. I found there were a couple of embellishments that I thought I had glued down, but didn't. And then I went back in again and I added the wax to the metal pieces, and I think that it made much more of an impact on the metal pieces than on the modeling paste. And I probably should have waited until the glossy accent was dry on all the metal pieces before adding the wax, but it ended up working out, but that would have been a little bit of a wiser choice. I wanted to add just a little bit of bling to this layout. I don't mind adding some sparkle, even on layouts that I want to look rather rustic. I added some gold faceted self-adhesive jewels to the scroll piece at the top of the photo. I was thinking that those white enamel dots on the photo corners looked a little bit too stark white, so I decided to take those off and replace them with some of the gold jewels. I used a piece of acetate to protect the photo, and now I'm using some watered down white acrylic paint and I am splattering it all over my layout. I don't mind, and I even want the splatters to go on the metal pieces, but for the lock in the upper right hand corner, there were just too many white splatters on that one embellishment, so I decided to wipe some of those off. And then I kept rotating the layout and adding a few more splatters to each section. And I really like the way the white splatters look against these papers. These papers have a rustic, almost a patina look to some of them. And I love that combination of the white splatters with the rusty age looking pattern papers. So that was the last touch. This layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch A Punched Out Thursday to Die For. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video. For more A Punched Out Thursday to Die For, I recommend checking out the videos of Sonia, Ronnie Sue, and Kathy, who also create layouts for this hop. The links to their channels are in the description box. Also in the description box is information about this paper pack and all of the other materials I use to make this layout. I hope you have a fantastic day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.